Hello, my name is Jessica Lemonager, and I work in the Northwest region. I will be covering Section L, Other Agricultural Information, Section M, Land Values, and Section N, Economic Data on the entire operation of the June Area Questionnaire. Section L screens for the presence of hired agricultural workers on the operations payroll during the current year. If the respondent answers the screening question with yes, then you will ask what was or what will be the largest number of hired agricultural workers on the operations payroll in any one day. Record the answer in box 989. If the respondent doesn't know or doesn't plan to have any hired labor, record the response code in box 990 and move to the next section. There are two key phrases to pay attention to when asking the labor screening question. First, the workers hired must be on the operations payroll. One way to help an operator distinguish if a person qualifies is if the worker will be receiving either a W-2 or a 1099 form for wages or compensation received. Unpaid workers, custom workers, and contract workers should be excluded. Secondly, the work performed is expected to be geared towards agricultural production. For example, if an operation hires people to work exclusively in the gift shop, retail store, on-site winery, and are not involved in producing any of the items being sold, then those workers are excluded. The interviewer's manual provides examples of the types of workers to include and exclude as hired workers. Of course, when in doubt, fill it out. If you're not sure if they should be included, then include them along with a comment as to what the workers do for the operation. Keep in mind that if the screening question is coded with a yes or a don't know, then there is a good chance that the operation will be included in the agricultural labor survey. Section M includes questions about the value of land associated with the entire operation, both inside and outside the segment. The information collected in this section is used to provide estimates of state-level farmland values published by NASS every August. Policymakers use this data to monitor the financial health of the farm sector, design farm and credit programs to assist farmers, and to measure the year-to-year fluctuation of land values and net worth of operations. The market value is defined as the value at which the farm or ranch land could be sold under current market conditions. The instructions clarify that the market value being reported by the operator is not a tax-assessed value, and that the responses provided will not be used for taxation purposes either at the local, state, or federal level, nor will any of the data reported be shared with anyone outside of NASS. The first question asks for the operator's best estimate of the total market value of all land, dwellings, barns, and other buildings on the total acres operated. This includes land both inside and outside of the segment in the operating arrangement. Be sure to include the operator's dwelling and any other farm dwellings for partners or hired labor. Also include any livestock buildings, storage sheds, and grain bins. Finally, include any permanent irrigation equipment and the value of any water rights. This is followed by a question where we want to gauge how much the market value of the operation may have changed over the past year. Record whether the value increased, decreased, or was unchanged from the previous year in item 1A. If there was an increase or decrease noted in item 1A, report the percent change in 1B. Record the percent as a full number such as 2% or 5%. Do not use decimals or fractions such as 4.2% or 3.5%. In question 2, record the operator's best estimate of the market value of the acres operated inside the segment. In some states, question 2 will ask you to distinguish between the value of irrigated cropland and non-irrigated cropland, while in most states you will be asking for the value of all cropland, regardless if it was irrigated or not. Refer to Section D if needed to see what types of land were reported in the segment. If either cropland or permanent pasture was reported in Section D, then there should be a value reported for the corresponding land type. If Section D does not contain land of that type, for example, If there is no permanent pasture, then this value should be left blank. Acres that switch between cropland and pasture should be recorded as cropland. Also, be sure to include any idle cropland or land in government programs as cropland as well. If your questionnaire asks a separate value for irrigated cropland, include land that normally receives or has the potential to receive water by artificial means, even if the land was not or will not be irrigated in the survey year. Question 2 focuses on just cropland and permanent pasture. Be sure to exclude the value of any dwellings or buildings within the tract. The value of those buildings should be included in the entire farm market value reported in question 1. Some respondents have a difficult time answering this question because they aren't intending to sell their operation in the near future. Ask the respondent to do their best in answering the questions, but if they truly don't know the market value, or they don't know how much the property value has changed in the past year, then don't know is an acceptable answer. Do not try to estimate for the answers, and do not suggest to the respondent a plausible value based on what other operators in the segment have told you about their land values. Simply write DK next to the cell. In CAPI, you can enter a DK in the cell, or you can leave the cells blank. Also, if an operator reports an unusually high or low market value, please write a comment to explain the situation. For example, if the majority of the land is in woods, or if the development rights have been sold, or if the operation is in a high-value neighborhood or county.
All right, I'm back for another practice exercise. And this one will cover section M. All right, let's take a look at exercise number 4. If a respondent doesn't know the total market value for their land and buildings on the total acres operated, what should you do? Is it A, estimate for the respondent based on data you find on the internet? B, write don't know next to the cell or leave it blank? Or C, suggest values based on what other operators in the segment have told you? Feel free to pause the video until you come up with an answer. The correct answer is B. You can write don't know next to the cell or leave it blank. If a respondent truly doesn't know the market value, then we do not want to probe for an answer and give suggestions. Simply write don't know, and in CAPI, you can enter a DK or just leave it blank.
Section N, we collect economic data on the entire operation. The data from this section is used to classify the operation by value of sales and farm type. Be sure to familiarize yourself with the include and exclude instructions noted in this section in order to obtain an accurate information from the respondent. Check the box next to the value range that best represents the operation's gross value of sales for the previous year. Then enter the corresponding code into the box marked with item code 860 to the right. If the operator refuses to provide this information, please make a note on the paper form and in CAPI to explain the situation. On the bottom of that page, question 2 is an enumerator action, not a question to be asked of the respondent. If the gross value of sales in the previous year was less than $1,000, meaning that you entered code 1 in box 860, then you are to continue to the point recording sheet on the next page. If the sales exceeded $1,000 in the previous year, skip the point recording sheet. The point recording sheet for operations with less than $1,000 in sales is used to help quantify the potential for agricultural sales. This section is only filled out for operations with less than $1,000 in sales. On this page, record information about the entire operation, both inside and outside of the segment. Be sure to include crops grown, land uses if not necessarily for crops, and any livestock or poultry now on the acres operated. The data recorded here are translated into points, which help determine the operation's potential for agricultural sales. The page is separated into several categories of crops, livestock, and other land uses. The most common commodities are pre-printed on the form. If an operation produces something that is not one of the pre-printed items, you can enter the names for the other crops or livestock on the blank lines provided. If there are several crops produced that are not listed, they can be combined together in the appropriate category. Cropland and other land use items, unless otherwise indicated, should be recorded to the nearest tenth of an acre, or to 1 decimal place, as indicated by the pre-printed decimal point in each cell. Livestock, with the exception of certain aquaculture items, should be recorded in head. You will notice some commodities, including CRP, on this screenshot are grayed out. These items do not need to be recorded here because they have been previously recorded in the questionnaire. For those of you wondering why the cattle lines were also not grayed out, keep in mind that the cattle section could potentially be skipped if the cattle box in section C was not checked. There are a few things that I want to mention about some of the sections of the point reporting sheet that have caused problems in past years. The acres enrolled in the CRP or WRP programs were recorded in section E, and those will be pulled into the points table behind the scenes, as indicated by the gray box in the first column that says section E. The dollars received for CRP and WRP payments should be reported on the point reporting sheet. Do not record any acres in idle cropland that were already reported as CRP acres. If you did, those acres would be double counted, inflating that operator's points. Under woodland crops, cut Christmas trees and short rotation woody crops are recorded to the nearest tenth of an acre. But for operations producing maple syrup, record the number of maple taps, not the number of maple trees, and not the acres of sugarbush. A couple of final notes regarding the point recording sheet. If the operation has less than $1,000 in sales, the point recording sheet will need to be completed. Be sure not to record any acres for the farmstead or acres in waste. They are not worth any points, and adding them to the table could artificially inflate an operation's point value. Finally, space for indoor nursery, floriculture, greenhouse, or other horticultural crops should be recorded to the nearest square foot, while outdoor nursery crops should be recorded to the nearest tenth of an acre. The final piece of section N is identifying the type of farm. In question 3, you are asked to select the category or farm type from which the largest portion of the gross value of sales came. Categories 1 through 8 are crop farms, while categories 9 through 16 are associated with livestock producers. You can only check one box. If the respondent reports that the sales are split evenly between 2 categories, ask the respondent which group he or she feels is more important to the operation or would represent the operation's primary production activity. For example, suppose that an operator raises both field crops and hogs. Perhaps you can ask if they would consider themselves a crop producer that raises hogs or a pork producer that raises crops. If you or the operator are having difficulty deciding which code is best, leave notes explaining the situation and move on to the next section. If the operation had no sales during the previous year, then select the category that best describes the farm type. For instance, an operation that only raises horses might not have sold any horses last year. Even though the operation had no sales, they would be considered a horse farm, and you would use code 13. For CRP-only operations, use code 8. Once you have determined the type of farm, enter the category number associated with that farm type in the box with item code 862 on the right-hand side of the page. This concludes the economic portion of the June area questionnaire. Land values are important for contributing to the land values publication, while value of sales and farm type help to classify each farm. Thanks for watching!